Hello friends, I'm David Bose. It's so good to see everybody here today. Still here in Arkansas, and it's a little cloudy, but really a mild winter. Not sure what is a normal winter for Arkansas, but it seems really nice. It was beautiful yesterday. Took a long walk with my daughter, and we went down to the river. It was beautiful. Took the dogs. Well, friends, this is the third video in the series about the sun as a projector. And, we went through quite a bit of stuff. Very interesting things about how we should be healthy, how we can be healthy. But this whole thing, actually all of life, always ends up being so confusing. I mean, you can say, well, I believe this, and then your mind's like, wait a minute, what about this? I think we have to, in order to get it all straight, we really need to get to the bottom of everything. But is there a bottom to anything? I mean, think about this. This is just physics. This is just math. We all agree, I think, that math is real. Without math, there's nothing real. I mean, I can look at what's before me, and I can see two trees. But for me to tell you that there are two trees, and to verify that there are two trees, I've got to accept math. In other words, logic. And standard speech that we've determined always comes out. It's a science. It comes out the same every time. We've all agreed to this. It's like a language. We have to agree to the language. So, in my language, what if I say, oh, those two trees is actually four? And I'm not even talking about, whether it's Greek or Hebrew. That's not exactly what I mean, because in Greek and in Hebrew, there's still the same principles behind it. We still have math pretty much the same. Well, that's kind of interesting there, because while languages are different in every country, pretty much science around the globe, they probably use the letters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 anywhere in the world. And so science is universal. It's really the universal language. And I believe that is what it's talking about in the Bible, where it says that this God Jehovah confused their languages and divided the nations. Because, at that time, language was integrated into math and science. I think that is the esoteric wisdom. I think that's what Pythagoras was hanging on to, like remnants of this ancient truth that he got from Solon, who was a priest of the Egyptian pharaonic priesthood. So that esoteric wisdom, all the learning of the wisdom of the Egyptians that Solomon understood and that Jesus taught when he went down into Egypt until he was about 18 years old. All of that information was the sciences and had to do with astrology. Today we just think, oh, well, that's some kind of witchcraft or something. No, astrology has to do with numerology, the numbers 12, the numbers 36, the numbers 9, 60. There's 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. 6 times 6 is 36. It's 360 degrees. It's all a beautiful science. And so this is what we've established. A lot of you don't trust a lot of things, and I don't blame you. There's so many things. But I will tell you briefly that what we believe about the sun is absolutely not true. As I've said, the sun is a projector. And I'm not going to go into this particular point here in this video, but maybe in an upcoming video we'll talk about a little bit more science about how they've misunderstood. I mean, we're talking about the moon a lot. We're talking about the earth. Some say it's flat. But what they have been telling us about the sun is completely wrong. It's not hot on the sun. And it's not gaseous. It has a surface. And there are actually beings that live on the sun. But anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. A lot of you who don't watch my videos will probably click off at that point just because I said that. And so that maybe just wets your whistle for some of you who are interested in at least hearing the information about why that is. But We'll say that to another time. But the point is there's a lot we don't know. And that's because to the degree in which we've accepted this science, we can understand the universe. But to the degree that we're going by pseudoscience and propaganda, we're misunderstanding everything. So today we've got language, math, science, grammar, history, all these different subjects, astronomy. They're all different subjects, separated. That's why we don't know anything, because he divided our language. See, it's all divided up into different sciences and groups and categories. But as you begin to integrate, some call it synthesize, as you begin to integrate all this information, you find out it's all one. So you look at the trees, and whether you speak English or Greek or French, we can agree there's two. We can agree that there's 2 and 2 makes 4. So we can say this a couple of different ways. We can say we got to get back to the original truth, the original language. Or we could just say that we've got to get back to a foundation to build our house. But we don't need to recreate a new foundation. There is already a natural language that comes to us. Imagine in your mind Adam and Eve in the garden. They had just arrived into this world. Did they know how to communicate? Yes, they did. Look at dogs. From the time they're born, they know how to communicate. They instinctively know where their mother is, where to get food. They learn to walk without anybody taking them to school. And so the problem then with human beings is not so much that we're inherently ignorant, but that we are being lied to. The devil's a deceiver. This God Jehovah creates darkness. What is darkness? It really is just the inability to see the light. But you see, the light is always shining. The light was shining from the beginning, and the darkness cannot overpower it, according to the book of John. So light has come into the world, but the world has loved darkness rather than light. That's a telling verse. Our Father in heaven created a world, and he is light, and there is no darkness in him. So everything from our Father is good, and it is light. It is real. It's the reality. The other thing, the darkness, is the illusion. So what is it saying? It says that light is in the world. It's there. But you can be deceived. You can be confused. But in spite of the truth that exists, which is really reality, the darkness doesn't exist, because our Father in heaven is the only creator and the only one who makes everything. So darkness doesn't really exist. It's an illusion, just a lack of light. So the darkness then is what human beings love, because humans allow themselves to be deceived. They're not looking to the light. They're not receiving the grace, which is free, but they're just saying, hey, we got to make up our own world. But our world that comes from the ego is an illusion. It's full of pride, hypocrisy. It will not stand. It's an illusion. So there has to be a very simple way to get to our Father. And that's what we want to explain in this video. The simple way to get back to where we need to be. You see, the darkness is simply not having access to the spiritual mind, to the spiritual man within us, to the Christ. And part of the way that you can do that is to create confusion. But what is confusion? An entirely new system that is based on falsehood. Every nation and kingdom and government on the face of the earth has basically the same system. And it's the truth. It's this science. But to the degree that they can stop you from learning the science, that's the degree that they keep you in ignorance. You see, you're ignorant. In other words, you don't know. Not knowing is the problem. But everybody would naturally know. So how do they stop you from knowing? By getting you out of your element. by confusing and dividing your own mind. And so the lies aren't so much a whole new narrative as much as it is, you can't be free. You can't use your own heart, your own mind. You can't think for yourself. You can take this divided language, which is so complex now because we've divided it all up and confused everything. Babel means confusion. So we've confused everything. And that keeps you puzzling over nonsense. It's kind of like in government when they say, oh, we need to talk about old men dressing up like women and gay rights and all these things. It wasn't a problem, but we started talking about it as though this 1% of the population had to have rights. Right? What does that mean? It's all convoluted. Meanwhile, what would naturally be coming to our mind would be, leave me alone. I don't really know what you're doing over there behind the bushes. I don't care what you're doing. It's not part of my life. If there's a consequence to you for doing what you're doing, you'll experience that, and I'm sorry for you. Maybe you'll learn from that. But I'm over here on my rock, and on my rock, all I'm interested in is making sure my children are safe. We eat the right things. We know how to breathe. We are happy. We frolic, and we have our freedom. That's all that matters. So here's the simple truth, like Jesus said, let your eye be simple and your whole body should be full of light. There it goes back to the word light. Light is just beautiful. Everybody can see the light. Unless you turn away from it, unless you're led out into a place where everything is confused and you've been told to shut your eyes and then count to 10 backwards and then stand on your head and now recite the Pledge of Allegiance in French. And then you're like, what? I'm so confused. Okay. But none of that's important. See, if you weren't standing on your head, you'd know. If you weren't being told to repeat something backwards, you'd know. This people over here on this rock down here over the river, they're living a life where no one's telling them what to do. They're going by their own teacher within themselves, which is the Holy Spirit, which Jesus said you don't need any man to teach you. But the Holy Spirit is your only teacher. And we've turned that into some kind of doctrine when Jesus was just telling us a fact. We don't need government. That's what he was saying. You don't need the law of Moses to teach you. You can go by your own spirit, which is connected and is one with the Spirit of our Father in heaven. I and the Father are one. I do as I see my Father doing. Leave me alone. I don't need your stinking laws, man-made laws. Our Father in heaven doesn't make a maze for us to try and figure out, and if we can't figure it out, we go to hell. This is the problem. We're living in a world which is upside down, backwards, and inside out. And somehow or another, we're being blamed for that. You find yourself sitting in a wretched, awful, wicked, terrible place. And someone's pointing all these injustices out to you. And all the wounds and the scars on your body and saying, what's wrong with you? You're bad. That's why we create these prisons for bad people like you. And oh, you're not going to our school and getting our propaganda. See, you're not doing what we say, so therefore you're bad. And this is creating the problem. What we need to do is devoid ourselves of all of this worrying. Jesus says we cannot change anything by worrying about it. Worrying is the carnal mind. Now, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Don't let your conscious carnal mind worry about what the spiritual mind has got already figured out. You see, our Father in heaven created a world with beautiful, beautiful things that have an integral plan. There's a plan here. And the sunshine comes down and makes things grow. You don't have to think about it. And you don't have to wonder, what should I put on and what should I wear? It's provided for you. As long as we refuse to live in the world as it really is, the real world, and we try to make this artificial world called government, as long as we look at the lion and the eagle and the bull and the man in their classes, in their orders, and their beauty, and accept them as they are, beautiful, and let their natural spirit guide and direct them, which is that same natural spirit that's in the universe. And they're called living creatures. And through the Word, all things were created, and it was perfect, and it was good. There was no darkness. There was no cursings. It was only a blessing. But now if you take that lion and you begin to degrade it into this four-headed leopard and a beast that begins to devour flesh and becomes carnivorous and beastly. A lot of people ask me, Dave, what's the beast of Revelation? The beast is the world that is degraded, that is human government, based on human laws, and not based on the natural world our Father in heaven created from the beginning. So, we can take this entire subject that we're dealing with here, and we can get to the bottom of who we are and what we're supposed to do based on this same principle. We can do this with everything that we learn and study. So, scientists are saying, all right, here's a food, and we've dissected it and looked at it through a microscope and a telescope and we've determined that there's 5 different nutrients that you have to have. Of course, we didn't see these other 1,000 nutrients and what they do and how they play parts, and we're just going to assume, because we're capable of identifying 5 nutrients and we think we might know what they do, so we can replicate that and put it in a pill and give it to you. Oh, wow, we need vitamin this and vitamin that, so let's go to the store and get that and we'll be fine. Well, why would you even need to do that? Right? Are you saying that food isn't good enough? That when our Father in heaven made the world, we somehow or another, just eating food wouldn't be good enough? Well, Dave, I mean, let's face it. Like I said in yesterday's video, everybody in the world is deficient in vitamin D. Basically, just about all the vitamins, K2 and magnesium is very important, potassium and all these vital nutrients, iron. Got to do something. We're not getting enough vitamins and nutrients. We're dying. So we have to supplement, right? Well, you might. You might in certain circumstances. I agree that if a person is completely deficient in vitamin D3, it would be beneficial to go to the store and buy a supplement of D3. However, if you'd have done that a few years ago without your K2, it wouldn't have done you much good. So, now that we have a little more information, I think it's still beneficial to get your vitamin D3 and take it with a K2, especially if you're really dying and you're really sick. It can actually restore the reserves of D3 and K2 in your body so that you can get well. But overall, I recommend this. Let's get out of the world. Let's get out of the confusion. And let's go back and learn from the teacher which is within us. That teacher within us does not say you need to build a skyscraper and call it Wells Fargo. It does not say we need to have green pieces of paper to put in our wallets, and without that we can't live or eat or breathe. And that some entity, not even a government entity for the people, by the people, is going to require that we give them interest on all of our transactions. It doesn't say any of this. It doesn't say we need a government of 100 senators, 2 for each state, and all these different congressmen who are going to make laws and legislate for us as to what we're going to do and what's going to be allowed, whether or not we can eat this substance or this substance is allowed, or we can trade this substance. Maybe you and I are out in the woods and I've got something you want, and I trade it for something you have. Oh, that's illegal, and you didn't have a permit. So literally there is no free trade in this country. Anyway, we could go on and on with all the injustices. People are in jail. And except for some very strange predicaments, I don't believe anybody should be in jail. There might be a situation where somebody is violent and he's just out of his mind for whatever reason. Let's not even get into the reason that might be, because most of that is societal problems, and the reason the person's acting in that manner is because society has made him crazy. But for whatever reason that this person's crazy, the point is he's trying to hurt people. All right, I would lock him up, definitely, until we could figure out what's wrong with him. And if we don't know what's wrong with him and can't help him, then okay, keep him locked up, but we're not going to let him out and let him hurt people. Granted, I would say that prisons, for that reason, might be fine. However, I don't happen to believe with the premise. I don't happen to believe that human beings go wacko all by themselves. And I don't think that our present system is helping. I think if we got rid of the present system and let people run out through the woods and go by their teacher within and live according to their own dictates and their own conscience, I believe people are naturally loving, good, kind. I believe all the wars were created by the elite to make money off of us and to destroy us. So we're living in this confusion and we're dying. If we weren't, we would be living naturally, and our first instinct would be to go get food, and we would naturally go to a place where there was trees, and we would pick the fruit or the nuts or whatever. But you see, in our world, because we're so far removed from that world that we don't have any really access to anymore, we're like caged animals, and we don't know what it's like to be outside in the sunshine. So there's all these things that pop up, and we think, well, how do you do that, Dave? We'd starve out there, there's nothing to eat, right? We'd be cold. We have to have factories make coats and boots and cars to get around, and how could we live? I mean, there'd be like a brute beast. Dave, you're crazy. No, it wouldn't be a brute beast. We'd be like living creatures, divine beings who were living according to our own dictates and our own conscience, and we'd be happy. And I'll tell you something, we'd be a lot better off with our own instinctual nature directing and guiding us rather than these laws, which are based upon somebody trying to make money, somebody trying to control you. They're ruining the world. They're ruining our minds. Not just the world, they're ruining your own mind. So now it's gotten integrated into everything you do, and you can't even imagine how you would live without this government. So here we are in this predicament where we cannot grasp how we could possibly live without somebody telling us what to do. Well, follow me now. Okay, so imagine you're in this world, and let's say you're in the United States, somewhere in the United States where probably you're going to have a winter. So during the winter, things don't grow very well. You're not going to be able to find a lot of food. But even in the summertime, most of you probably wouldn't be able to find any food. Let's say you're out in the wild and you walk up to a tree and you notice that there's little bean pods on that tree. And you squish the pod and you pop these little beans out onto your hand. You say, well, those beans are kind of hard. They don't even taste good. Can't eat that, Dave. What am I supposed to eat? This is bitter. Well, friends, have you ever tried eating a pinto bean? They're hard. They're bitter. And in fact, a pinto bean, if you eat that bean raw, somehow you could chew it up, it'd make you very sick. Because there's certain chemicals in that bean that, eaten in that particular way, can't necessarily be eaten. In fact, around most beans or even grains, there's a protective shell. How are you going to get that off? Well, see, we have lost the science of eating. Oh boy, you're going to look at this bean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you're saying, well, look at this bean or this little piece of grain. I need more food than that. Give me a big steak. I mean, what the heck is this? So, we're going to starve to death. Well, let me tell you something. In the ancient times, if you had a bag of these grains or beans, and they got damp, you'd find out in the morning something very amazing. They all sprout. Oh, buddy, isn't this interesting? When it sprouts, it takes about, 1 day for it to sprout, and then maybe 2 or 3 days, you've got these little plants, little sprouts. And you put them in the sunshine, they green up, and it has chlorophyll. And before we even get to the most important thing that we're going to say about this, there's chlorophyll. Oh, my goodness. We're running around in this world, and none of us has even had any chlorophyll in our diet today. We're not eating foods with any chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is basically kind of like your own blood. It's the blood of the plant. And so basically when you eat chlorophyll, it's like getting a blood transfusion. It's like you're renewing your lease on life. I mean, almost nothing is better for you than this chlorophyll. And it's funny because we're not getting this in our diet. But wait, there's more. Chlorophyll, probably about 2% of you out there have even heard of it. There's no area on the pyramid that the doctors are telling us we need to get this thing called chlorophyll. I don't see the USDA recommendations for chlorophyll. Maybe that's why we're dying. Because you see, if you ate naturally and correctly, you might be getting something that you're not even getting at all in your diet at this point. So, wow. There's one substance that you desperately need if you want to get well, if you want to be healthy, you're probably not getting at all. I'm not saying you've never had any. I mean, it's something you might have gotten a few times, maybe when you got some sprouts and put it on your salad. But, you know, this is something that there are like millions and millions and maybe even a majority of Americans that go through their entire life and practically get zilch. None of this life-giving substance that comes from the plant that you don't get at all. Chlorophyll is probably one of the most amazing things that we need for our bodies, and it's probably one of the least available nutrients. People don't just go around eating a lot of chlorophyll. Yes, it's in your green leafy vegetables and stuff, but it's not in your spinach as much as it's in sprouts. And not that many people eat a lot of sprouts. Even people that are eating sprouts are basically just eating a few here and there. But literally, chlorophyll may be one of the most miraculous things you'll ever learn about. Chlorophyll is basically the same thing as human blood. It's the blood of the plant. And literally the molecular structure is completely and absolutely the same. They're the exact same thing. The only difference is that hemoglobin in the blood is attached to iron, and chlorophyll is attached to magnesium. They do the exact same thing. So not only is it basically giving you a blood transfusion, but it also helps to increase red blood cells in your own blood. This stuff will purify your system. It gets rid of all the bacterial growth that you don't need. It is bad for you and will literally activate your immune system. It literally attaches itself to the hard minerals that you don't need in your body and gets rid of them. Another thing about chlorophyll is that it is anti-inflammatory. And we've talked about this in other videos, but when you have stuff going through your blood that's not supposed to be there, it causes inflammation on your artery walls. And so then your cholesterol comes in there to clean it up, it attacks it, and begins to create plaque throughout your system. That is a very serious thing. You heard about free radicals. Well, that means it's these little radical things that are running around in your body, and they're causing you to die. They're giving you plaque, and they're causing cancer, and they're literally destroying you, making you sick. So that's why chlorophyll is so important. It gets rid of that. Now, a lot of foods do that. There are other things that can help with that, but this is one of the main ways that you can get rid of inflammation. That will help you with your skin problems. It'll help with arthritis, all these autoimmune deficiencies. So building your blood, it renews your tissues. It will promote the healthy flora in your gut, the correct bacteria, and gets rid of the bad bacteria. It'll activate enzymes, which helps produce vitamins E and K and A and different B vitamins and stuff that you need. You see, that's one of the reasons we don't get enough nutrients into our bodies, not just because we don't eat enough nutrients. That's a big reason, but also because we can't absorb the minerals. So we need this chlorophyll, and the best way to get it is by sprouting our seeds and beans and grains. So it has a lot of vitamin A, it's got a lot of vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K, which we talked about. That's so important. Where do you get these vitamins? In a pill? No, just sprout your seeds, your beans. You go to the store, you buy beans. You can buy a whole pound of beans for $1 or $2. And out of that 1 pound of beans, if you sprout it, you've got all the food you need for a week. And it's a superfood. And it has all this stuff. You don't have to take vitamins, friends. It's right there in your food if you'll eat your food. It will heal your wounds faster. It will clear up your skin and your face. So, all right, now, we're just talking about one thing that you're going to get out of these sprouts. Just one of the benefits. And you haven't been doing this. So, now think about this. Your immune system. Do you want a very good immune system? Well, this is the way to do it, friends. This is it. Do you want to get rid of the candidus and the fungus and the pylori and all of these bad bacteria and diseases that are festering in your gut? Chlorophyll will do it, friends. It will detox your blood. It will build blood cells, bring oxygen to all the parts of your body, restore your blood, and make it pure. If you don't have good blood, you cannot heal, you cannot be alive, friends. I mean, if you're going to build a house and you need lumber and tools and nails and things, look, if you don't get that lumber to the site where you're going to build a house, whether or not you have the best lumber or the best rocks or, the best builders or whatever, you're not going to build that house. It's not going to get done unless you have a vehicle that can get all the lumber over there to the location that you're going to build the house. If you don't have blood flow, if you don't have good blood, and you don't have the nutrients and the immune system, all depends upon your blood, and this is what chlorophyll does. So it will energize your body. See, chlorophyll is what is responsible for photosynthesis in the plants. It gives the plant energy and transfers sunshine and minerals in the ground into life. Basically, it's life. You haven't been getting the life in your food, and therefore you're dying. You need life, friends. You've got to eat your sprouted grains and beans and nuts. You've got to do it. You've got to have life. You can't live without life. You need energy. That's what this is. It can get rid of anemia. It has all these antioxidants. It will get rid of cancer. It will help you sleep better. It will help you with your pancreas, with your kidneys, and get rid of kidney stones. It helps with blood clotting, wound healing, hormonal balance, detoxifying the body. It promotes digestive health. It'll get rid of arthritis. Literally, you won't age if you eat this every day. You just won't age. It will give you life. And that is just one of the reasons that you should be eating your sprouts, because we've been so fixated on getting plants and crushing them and putting them in an oven or cooking it or frying it or whatever. And for so many years, we haven't even considered the natural way to eat food that people did for thousands of years, but we no longer do because of the city-state, because of government, because of laws, because of society, because of the propaganda, and we're dying, and it's that simple, friend. And so, we have just been offered one choice, and we were told that's the only choice we had. There's the food. The only way you can eat that is to grind it up, put it in the oven, or fry it up in a pan, burn the crap out of it, mix a bunch of chemicals, and eat that. And so that's all we can conceive of doing. But let me tell you what else happens when you simply take these grains and sprout them. Something amazing happens. Let's say that little bean or that little grain has, 10 milligrams of vitamin E or 20 milligrams of protein. You let that thing sprout. Now instead of 20 milligrams of protein, you've got 200. Now instead of just a little bit of vitamin A, you've got 20, 30 times the amount of vitamin E or A or D or whatever. And there it is. All the abundant nutrition you need, but yet somehow or another, because of our government, we've never been told that you can just sprout all these things and overnight have all of this food. Look, you can just go out and pick a handful of grains. It'd take you a few minutes. Moisten it. Overnight, you've got a whole pot full of food that you can eat the next day. and it has more nutrition than any food. It's a superfood beyond superfoods. Just think about the ramifications of what we just said. Scientists have been working on some kind of food for, I guess, 100 years to feed everybody. That's why supposedly they're working on genetically modified corn and soy so they can feed the world. Or maybe it would be rice or beans. They've tried different things to find this one food that will just grow in an abundance and they can just feed the world. Some special crazy superfood that has more protein, more vitamins and minerals so people can be healthy. Well, here you go, friends. It's a big fraud. It has nothing to do with overpopulation. It has nothing to do with there being something wrong with the world or our genes have got some problem or... No, it's them. They don't want us to be healthy. They don't want us to have the protein because they know perfectly well that if you take these seeds and grains of just about any food, just a handful of these little grains, and you sprout them, you increase the protein content like 20, 30 times the amount. Now, no one has ever claimed that they had some kind of superfood that has 100% more vitamins, nutrients, and protein, and fatty acids, everything you need. And you don't need scientists to do it for you. You can do it right in your own home. You can go right out your backyard, pick beans that are growing on the trees, grains and seeds and nuts and berries or whatever, and just sprout them. You can get the food that already is existing in this world, beans. Just go buy a bag of beans at the store. The ordinary beans that they're already making and they're already growing, and you can increase your protein, your vitamins and minerals and nutrients 100-fold just by sprouting them. So there really isn't any problem in the world of feeding everybody. It is simply a lie. They have never wanted us to be healthy. They don't want us to have the amount of protein that we need or the vitamins and nutrients we need. This is why they're creating all of these synthetic vitamins that are killing us. They're not making us better. They're not making us well. And so today, you've got a lot of people that are running around eating sprouts, bean sprouts, alfalfa sprouts, broccoli seed sprouts, radishes. Do you know that you can take a watermelon and spit the seeds out into a can? Of course, after you eat the watermelon, spit the seeds out. You've got like a whole handful of little black seeds. Well, first of all, they're too hard to chew. They got a big shell, and they're probably going to be hard to digest. What do you do with these things? Well, throw them away. Well, most of the seeds in a watermelon don't ever get used. They just rot in the ground. What are they for? Well, in the book of Genesis, it says, "In the beginning, our Father made this world," and he tells Adam and Eve, Adim, male and female, he made them, "You may eat the fruit of every tree or every plant and the seed therein." Isn't that interesting? Why does he mention that? And the seed therein. All he would have had to have said is, "You may eat the fruit," which is PR in Hebrew, para, where we get the word pear, prune, apricot, berry. Even the word fruit is PHR. It's the Phoenician way of saying BR in Hebrew, or PR. Berry is the P with a B sound. All of these words come from this original word PR. And all the Bible would have to say, if our Father in heaven intended for us to just eat the fruit, right, this sweet, pulpy treat that spoils right away and we can't eat it all year long. Fruit only grows in the fall, right, into summer or something. We harvest it. Then what do you do with it? Well, you can do a lot of things. You can dry the fruit. You can eat the fruit, of course. But the one thing that people did in ancient times that we were told to do in the scriptures, but immediately that truth, that amazing nutrition was taken away from us because of that God Jehovah who said, "By the sweat of your face you will till the ground like a slave, and by the sweat of your brow you will eat this lacham," which is a Hebrew for, they translate it bread, but it literally means cooked food. Cham means burned or cooked. So he says you're going to process this food and cook it. And you're going to be a slave. And it's not going to produce nothing but thorns and thistles. And you're going to cook this food and die. Well, That's a far cry from what originally we were supposed to do. But you see, by this time, we had a government. We had laws. We had this God coming down and making arbitrary laws for us, telling us that we're cursed, telling us that we're a slave, telling us we had to till the soil, splitting our consciousness between the male and the female, putting us into this form, which is government law. And at this point, we're cursed and we're dying. But that's not the way we were created. We were created immortal. We were created to live forever. We were given an environment, which we still have to this day. If it weren't for these laws, if it weren't for this beast, if it weren't for this degradation and the improper use of our world and the lies, because he's the liar and the father of the lies, and he's a murderer, and from the beginning he's been doing this, and a slanderer, because we don't deserve it. And so if we had followed our Father in Heaven's guidelines and directions, and we had eaten the fruit of the plants. Fruit doesn't mean oranges and apples, friends. It means nuts, berries, grains, anything that is the product or offspring of a plant. That's what that word para means. And the seed therein. Many things, like for instance a watermelon, has so many seeds inside of that watermelon, like squash. You ever seen how many seeds are inside of a squash? Or an apple, right? Or a pomegranate. And of course nowadays a lot of our fruit and our vegetables are seedless because they don't want any of those seeds running around. But that's nasty. You don't eat that. In fact, seeds have been shown to fight cancer. And so they're actually illegal in the United States in some cases. And they're telling you that you should never eat apple seeds or peach seeds or anything like that. Well, the truth is that it's true that if you eat the seed raw, you could get sick because it's not meant to be eaten that way. You have to sprout that seed, and now all of a sudden, this 10 milligrams of vitamin becomes 300. And some of the vitamins that were almost non-existent now are abundant. Vitamins and minerals that you can't get any other way. So this is indeed a way for us to live. If you were out in the middle of nowhere, you could literally survive by just picking a handful of seeds or nuts and then sprouting them into a delicious meal that would be so great and so good for you. But you see, it doesn't stop there. We've lost so many other very important things that are vital to our health that we would have just found out by ourselves if we're out there in the wild. If we were living in this natural environment, we would already know these things. We would know that it's much more productive to eat the seeds sprouted than to eat them raw because, first of all, the seeds are very small. They're hard to digest. Most of them can't be digested. Most of them are bitter, makes your stomach upset. And there's no nutrition. You'll die, and you don't get enough seeds. But if you sprout them, you get an increase in volume, a huge increase in protein, and they taste a lot better. Seeds don't taste that great, friends, but sprouts are wonderful. And friends, they're not all like bean sprouts. They don't all taste like radishes. Like, for instance, watermelon seeds, if they're sprouted for one day, they pop the shell off, so you don't have to eat that hard shell. And you basically got something that's very close to something like a sunflower seed that's been deshelled. It doesn't have the shell. And it's meaty and it's good. You can add a little salt, roast it, or eat it plain. They found that when you roast these seeds, after they've been sprouted, if you roast them, it doesn't really do a lot of damage or decrease the nutritional value. So you can eat them raw or you can eat them roasted. You can boil them and make a stew, but you've got to sprout them first to get the nutrition out of them. And so, hence, the Bible says, you may eat all of the offspring of the plants with the seed therein. But now let's take a look at something else that we have not been told in a long, long time. For instance, the herbs of the field, the leaves and the roots. What do we do with that? Oh, well, that's illegal. You can't smoke marijuana. See, that's illegal. Why? Because it gives you well-being and opens up your third eye. And what does it do? It heals you. Well, does the Bible say that, Dave? Because I don't go by anything but the Bible. Well, yes, it does. It's also in the Hindu teachings. That's why Buddha was born from the lotus flower. That's a very hallucinogenic drug, my friends. All of the ancient esoteric systems used the herbs for healing and for opening the third eye. The Native Americans used peyote. Up in the northern climates, they used kinnikinick. Many peoples use the opium plant. There is the marijuana plant. There's so many different herbs to be found in nature. The lotus flower that can open up and heal your body and put you in touch with your spiritual self when you need it. So the Bible says that the leaves of the trees or the leaves of the plants are for the healing of the nations. So primarily the leaves, although in some cases we use the roots, but it's primarily vegetables or leaves that we use as herbs. So there's another thing that we have not been told and we've been lied to about because we were told that's evil. And somehow they're saying that drugs and herbs are the same thing, conflating the two and showing people flipping around on the sidewalk dying and overdosing because they're using drugs or chemicals and conflating that with herbs. Nobody's flipping around on the sidewalk overdosing on marijuana. And if people were using natural opium, they wouldn't be dying and overdosing on that either. It's only when they take that opium and make a chemical out of it and turn it into some kind of crazy street drug that it's dangerous. But the ancient peoples knew how to use these herbs, and they were fine. But of course, the governments of the world, the elite who created the governments, who want to deceive you, have used these things to their advantage. They've hidden the truth from you and twisted the truth and confused you and made you sick. And this is another thing that we have to get back to the original ways on. Number 3 is the eating of the fish and the eggs and the milk. All of the milk nowadays is pasteurized. And therefore, it is no longer any good for human consumption because as soon as you take and heat that milk up, you kill all the bacteria, which is what we call pasteurization. The bacteria in the milk is life. You have to have the bacteria. Raw milk, which is what you're supposed to make yogurt out of because the bacteria makes the yogurt when you let it sit and it ferments. The fermentation process is what, kind of like the sprouting process, is what gives life. So you just eat the milk by itself. That's for babies. But for grown-ups, we use it to make cheese and butter and yogurt and buttermilk and amazing things. And it doesn't stop there. It doesn't just stop with milk. The Germans take cabbage and ferment it. We got a little thing called sauerkraut. The Japanese take a little thing called soy. They ferment it, and we got a little thing called natto. And these Japanese people who eat this fermented soy are living to be over 100 years old. But you see, they're not even themselves eating enough of it because they're still going to Walmart or whatever stores they got in their country and eating this chips and garbage. And to some extent, they're not getting enough nutrition either. But if we would go back to the original ways where we fermented our food, because we didn't have refrigerators. Even the meat was fermented. They didn't have refrigerators, friends. So they took a piece of meat and they dried it on a rock. There's bacteria in that. And as long as you didn't allow your food to get foreign bad bacteria into it so that it would begin to rot, as long as you didn't allow that, like putting it out in the sunshine, so the sunshine would be like a disinfectant so it keeps the bad bacteria out. You lay it on a rock and you let it slowly dry or age, and then you eat it raw. You don't have to cook it. You don't cook your meat. You age it. So the Italians eat salami, which is aged fermented meat. A lot of you probably don't know that. But salami is not cooked. When you go to the store and you get salami, well, some of the salami nowadays is. It's not really salami. The sandwich slices, they're not necessarily aged. And they use chemicals to cure it. That's not real salami. The good salami that's probably more expensive is aged and fermented. And so, as I've said in other videos, I actually witnessed this as a young person. I watched some of the old timers, the way they would hunt in the old days. They would go out and get a deer and bring it in and hang it up in a tree, and they put salt around it, put a sheet around that so that it wouldn't get infected with bad bacteria. And they could literally eat off of that all year long. It never spoiled. It simply aged appropriately. And they'd go out and cut a hunk off of it whenever they wanted it. Even if it was out in the hot sun, it didn't spoil. So this is the way they ate their meat. But it isn't just meat. It isn't just milk. But it's a lot of different things. It's not just soy. It's many things. It's grapes. Okay, you turn it into wine. That's fermentation. And of course, doctors today are saying that actual wine, real wine, without all these preservatives and sulfates that they put in it at the store, but real wine that you make yourself, that, you don't, and by the way, you don't put yeast into it that you get at the store that they use to make bread, but you use the natural bacteria that's already on the grape. All you have to do is put grapes in a big pot, and squish it up, get the juice out of it, and let it sit without being contaminated by foreign bacteria, and it will ferment all by itself into a wine. And you don't add anything to it, like sugar or anything else. You just make real Burgundy wine. And that is a fermented drink. You can use dates, you can use pomegranates, you can use peaches, you can do lots of different, basically any kind of berry you can find in the wild. Gooseberries, sarvice berries, whatever you can find. Juniper trees actually have berries. Do you know that? Yeah, they're kind of good when they're ripe. And that's what they used to make gin out of. So basically we've lost the art of living because we're not allowed to live. We're not in the world. And so we're in this frame of mind that we're thinking, well, we can't live out there. What would we put on? What would we eat? What would we wear? So we're lost. We're lost because we're not following Christ. So now, perhaps, maybe, we can grasp what it means to follow Christ. Another little bit of enlightenment as to what that means, because, you see, it's not talking about following some man wandering around the streets of Jerusalem. It's talking about that inner spiritual guide who is within you, who knows all things, commands the seas, and it obeys him, commands the winds, who says to the fig tree, be uprooted. He says to the mountain, be removed and thrown into the sea, and it obeys him. Who says to the paraplegic, get up and walk. That spiritual man, Adam, who had dominion, who was told to have dominion over the world, and who was in harmony with it, who plays on his 10-string harp, which is the 10 vibrations that he harmonizes, and becomes one with everything around him, and knows instinctively the truth, because he is a living being, a divine being, one with God. And that person is full of light. In fact, his whole body is full of light. And so the Holy Spirit swallows up mortality. And you pass over from death to life. But it is a simple process. Really, it shouldn't take long, friends. Here's what we need to do. We need to stop, drop, and roll, as they say. If you get caught on fire, you stop, drop, and roll. It's a very simple process. And if you don't do that, you're going to die. So here we are. We're living in this world. You're on fire. What do you need to do? Stop right now. Drop to your knees now. And roll right on out of this system. And don't look back. And whoever leaves mother or brother or father or sister, houses or fields for his sake, shall receive 10-fold in this world and 100-fold in the world to come. Does that mean you can't talk to your family? That's not what it means, friends. It means nothing is more important than living in the real world. So if your mother and your father's living in the city, they got a mortgage, and they're paying for this beautiful hot rod Ford or Lincoln or whatever, and they want you to get a job and learn all this propaganda and go to college and slave for the rest of your life in this system, you got to say, no, thank you. I'm going to go and follow Christ, that inner spiritual teacher. And I can't hear him when I hear you blabbering at me. I can't hear him. I don't hear Christ when I'm sitting in the classroom listening to this PhD buffoon pontificate about stupidity and ignorance and lies. I got to get out of the world, and I got to go and follow that still small voice within me that teaches me the truth, that tells me how to live, and that more abundantly and in his grace. And I am not guilty. I'm not under your laws. I am not going to submit to your law, but I'm going to submit only to the Christ within me, willingly. See, it's a love relationship, and love casts out all fear. And we don't need your stinking laws. And so we follow the example that Jesus gave us, because he also left behind his mother. And that's only a symbol. Of course, he would never have left his mother. He never would have. He never did. But it's a symbol that we leave our father and our mother, and we stick unto our wife, and the two shall become one flesh. In other words, we leave this present world behind, and we find our inner spiritual self. And that spiritual self will have a wedding with the physical. And we'll put on our white robes of immortality. We'll pass over from death to life. We'll be born again, born from above, and we'll be filled with the Holy Spirit. In the upper room, the Holy Spirit shall come down, and upon our head shall be a little twin flame. One flame being the spiritual man, the other flame being the physical. And when the spiritual and the physical are ignited into one flame, then we know that Christ now has been contacted. He's inside, trimming the wicks, lighting the candles. Our chakras are open. We're in that upper room in a heightened state of awareness. And that Holy Spirit comes down and shakes the house wherein we sit, which is this physical world. It's shaken to its foundations. And we have contacted. And the walls of Jericho have come down. And we've saved the harlot, which is our soul. And we've entered into the promised land. We've gone through the river Jordan. We've stacked our rocks, 12 rocks in a circle at Gilgal. And we've gone through the wheel of rebirth. We've arisen out of the water, and from these frequencies and these lower vibrations, we've overcome the world. We've gone in and conquered the land. We've killed the 5 kings, our 5 senses, and crucified them. We've crucified the flesh. And we've been raised up with Christ, that we might live together with him. So anyway, friends, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there today, and get out there and see if I can enjoy some of this Arkansas weather. Hope you guys have a really great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.